Lesson 1.3, Part 2. So again, we're trying to decide how to solve for a certain variable with literal equations. In this case, we want to solve for k. And we're going to complicate things quite a bit here in looking at these problems. So notice that the k is right here, and we have to undo a 5 and a negative 2. Now, the first thing we can do is take care of the 5. Now, we've talked about undoing by doing addition and subtraction first, but this one's kind of confusing. So if this is confusing, then we might want to consider rethinking the problem. And I'm going to write this as 11j over 1. And we've all seen proportions before, and here's one where we cross multiply. Nothing's changed, but it might help us see what we need to do in order to solve this. So if we cross multiply, k minus 2 times 1 is just k minus 2. 5 times 11j is 55j. And now maybe it's more clear to see what we need to do to get k by itself. And if you see what I see, I need to add 2 to both sides to get k alone, which means we will end up with k equals 55j plus 2. And those are not like terms, so this is as good as you can get. So just by cross multiplying, we were able to maybe make this a much simpler problem. Number 6, we have parentheses. We haven't seen that before. But again, we would need to decide what we're solving for. In this case, it's t. Now, lots of times, we would just distribute the t and get rid of parentheses. But in this case, we want to be smart about our steps. And notice that t is on the outside of the parentheses, so it's t times the parentheses. So we can undo that by dividing by r plus 4. And that is an efficient way of taking care of this problem, which means we will be left with 28 over r plus 4 equals t. And that's solved. So a lot of this is looking at the question and deciding what is the most efficient way of solving it. Here we're looking for y, and here is y. So some thoughts, some considerations we need to make about how we would solve this. The first thing that comes to mind is moving this x. Now notice on the left side of this x, there's nothing, which means it's a positive x. So if I want to move it to the other side, we're going to subtract x from both sides. And then let's take a look and see what we have. Now we have minus, or negative 2/3 y equals 12 minus x. So how do we take care of a negative 2/3? Well, we can divide both sides by negative 2/3. We could multiply by its reciprocal, which in this case would be negative 3/2. Those are all okay ways to do it. But I'm going to write it a certain way that makes it look a little bit different, and let's see if that makes sense. I'm going to have negative 2, I'm going to put the negative with the numerator, and I'm going to put the y with the numerator. Because negative 2y over 3 is the same thing as negative 2/3 y. So basically all I did was I put the negative up above and I brought the y up above. Now that leaves us with an equation that maybe is a little bit more clear on what has to happen. So let's say that in this case, I'm going to undo the division by multiplying both sides by 3. Now, I have to multiply everything on the right side by 3, which means we're going to be left with negative 2y equals 36 minus 3x. That's distribution. Again, remember that by multiplying by 3, we canceled those 3's out. Now I have to take care of a negative 2. Now it's negative 2 times y, so I'll undo it by division. And I would divide everything on the right side by negative 2, which will leave us with y equals. And I can leave it like this, or I can do the divisions. So 36 divided by negative 2 is a negative 18. Negative 3 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3 over 2x. So this is an equivalent statement, and I would take either one. And our last question, we have a request to solve for q, and this one's different because q is on the inside of the parentheses. Before it was on the outside, so we could just divide by the parentheses, but when it's on the inside, it's different. We actually have to get rid of parentheses in this case. Actually, no, I could just do, and this is what I'll do. I'm going to undo the multiplication again, but instead of dividing by the parentheses, I'm going to divide by a. Now that gives us q minus 8 equals 23 over a. So notice again, I divided by what I didn't want. Last time I didn't want what was in the parentheses. This time I didn't want what was on the outside of the parentheses. And then we will add 8 to both sides. Now this one's kind of a goofy one, and how it looks when we're done, but q will equal 23 over a plus 8. And that's considered solved for q. And this ends lesson 1.3, part 2.